Welcome to the Registry Insider. I'm Bill Seifarth, CEO and Executive Director of the National Registry of EMTs. And today I have with me Dr. Paul Rosenberger to talk about the exam development life cycle and opportunities for you, EMS clinicians, medical directors, and educators to get part of the exam development activities that are ongoing here at the National Registry. So Paul, first of all, thank you for spending time with me again on another podcast or vodcast. And the essence of what we do at the National Registry is obviously developing examinations that are used for measuring competency. And as the manager of the content team here at the National Registry, explain to us a little bit at a high level, what is the exam development cycle? And then we'll kind of get into opportunities where folks can come to the National Registry in person and or virtually and be part of these development activities.
Yeah. So the life cycle, we define that as 7 different steps. And so I'll just run through those steps. There is the first thing we do is we have a practice analysis. And the practice analysis is a study of the practice of EMS. And so when we study that practice, we want to know what is it that clinicians do every single day when they come to work. And from that understanding what they do, the next step is to develop job tasks and what are the tasks that they do. And then finally, from that, we need to find the knowledge and skills that are associated with those job tasks. And so that is step number 1. After step 1 is done, then we create test specifications. And the specifications to an educator really is a blueprint. It's what does the test look like? What's the composition of the test? What are the domains and how much content is going to be measured in each of those domains. In step 3, we then write items, and we also review items.
And items are referred to as questions.
Questions.
And refer to them as items.
Yeah, so we work with a pool of writers, external SME writers, subject matter experts, and they write items for us in a 2-month cycle. And we tell them what it is that we need, at what level we need it, and the domains, and the writers then do an assignment, and then they submit it to us, and we check that assignment in and make sure it meets all our standards of style and grammar and all of that. When that's completed, we then move it out to a panel, a separate group of subject matter experts, and they review the content of those items, and they give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Or if we can revise an item and save an item during the panel, we do that as well. After that, step 4 is then they go out to the test and they're piloted, where the candidates actually experience those items, and then they give us a lot of feedback as to how difficult or how easy did they meet the standards that we have for our examination items. That's the statistical analysis. And the next step, we do a test specifications. I'm lying to you, I'm sorry. We do a standard setting where we look at the difficulty of those items and we set cut scores for our examinations. So the SMEs are brought to Columbus, and then they give us feedback as to the difficulty level of that examination, what is competent, what's not competent. And then finally, that last step is we're always evaluating our items as they come on or come down from the examination. And so we get to see, are they drifting? Or is something happening to those?
And by drifting, what do you mean?
A lot of times they get too easy because people get really familiar with the content. People unfortunately do talk about our items, and so people are now aware of what the content of the examination possibly could be. And so when they drift, they tend to drift upwards. Sometimes there's a clinical change of some sort, and all of a sudden content that was correct one day is now not correct because of a new recommendation or new evidence-based guideline that gave us some feedback as to what we should be doing clinically and what we should not be doing clinically.
Good. So it's a pretty extensive process, and we'll have a visual aid that folks can look at throughout the vodcast to kind of follow along with what you're saying. So there's a lot of steps there where you say subject matter experts come in. So who are these subject matter experts? And then more specifically, where are opportunities where folks that might be watching this vodcast or listening to it can come to Columbus and partake in these activities?
Yeah. So I would tell you that we're more of a facilitator of the test than we are the writer of the test.
Yeah. Well, elaborate more on that, because some people think that the National Registry, all we do is we sit around here in an ivory tower and write questions and make it impossible for people to pass. So it's
yeah.
not us that do it. It's the subject matter experts. It's the people from the community.
Yeah. So these subject matter experts contribute all through the whole process. And so in particular is that first one, that practice analysis, because we reach out to the community, the EMS community, and said, what is it that you do? Mm-hmm. And their feedback tells us what they do, which also tells us what we should test. Mm-hmm. So that's the first place they can get involved in this process. The second step, where they write and review items, we have writers that we contract with and pay to write those items. And so that's another opportunity for involvement. And then really the biggest one is that review panel where we bring people to Columbus, or in some cases we do it virtually, where they can look at those items and say, hey, this item's good or this item's not good, or this item needs some type of revision. So there's another step where they get involved in that.
And there's about one of those panels every month. So we have 12 a year.
Yeah.
So there's tons of opportunity for us EMS educators, state regulators, EMS clinicians, depending on the level of items we're looking at. I think I already said medical directors, anyone else that could or should be involved in those.
Yeah, so I think you named most of them. State officials, the educators. We need operators, people who are in the field.
Yeah, because some who have recently passed the exam.
That's correct.
Some who have been around for more than a decade or so.
Yep. And until we look at all levels, like you said, early in their career, mid-career, and late in their career. And so all these people give us that feedback during the panel to say this item looks good or it doesn't look good. We also have the panels reflect gender of the industry, and we also have the panels reflect race of the industry. And so there's a lot of things that go into and region. Yeah. So when you look at the 5 NASIMSO regions, we have a representative from each of those regions, so that the test isn't just heavy in Ohio or Texas or New Jersey or California. We want that test to have representation all across the nation.
So what I'm hearing you say, the National Registry's national exam is reflective of the nation.
That's correct.
Which we're testing. So,
that's right.
What about individuals who maybe listen that want to volunteer? Where can they go to find out more information?
So if they go to our website, volunteer.nremt.org, there is some information there that describes the process, but it's also where they can fill out a form to indicate that they want to be part of the process.
And we'll put that web address in the link in the description below. So you should be able to find that. If not, you can always go to our website at nremt.org and look for, or just search for volunteer, and you'll be able to find that link as well.
Yep.
So Paul, what are the, let's go a little bit more in terms of the opportunities for, you did a high level review, but let's first talk about practice analysis, then let's talk about item review, because I think there are 2 big areas, and then the third one we'll finish with the standard setting. Those are the 3 big areas you talked about. What kind of activities would someone that might be part of the practice analysis, what would they be undertaking and what would they be doing?
Yeah, so in the practice analysis, there'll be, in some cases, the most recent BLS practice analysis, we could have people who actually ride along with the ambulance crew, and they capture those job skills, those job tasks that they're doing. But they may also be on a panel and give us feedback as to whether those job tasks were actually correct and captured correctly.
And critical, too.
And Yeah, so when you look at the task or the practice analysis, we're looking at the frequency of those calls and the types of calls. We're also looking at calls that may not be so frequent, but have high criticality or potential for harm. And so when we capture those, we want to make sure we capture those correctly. And we then send that out as a survey to the community and saying, hey, did we get this right? And so they validate the practice analysis. And so lots of opportunities there. There's the actual write-out, potentially. There is the interviews, and then there is the survey itself where they say, hey, you got this right, or oh my gosh, you forgot this.
So that's the practice analysis where someone can get involved. The item review and item writing, if you participate in practice analysis or you participate in the item review, you're going to have attention drawn to you. And if you're interested in writing and learning how to write, there's a mentorship process you go through, and there is a training that you go through to make sure you're writing the items correctly and understand the style and our requirements as far as what's needed to go in to make the item a good item. So that's separate. But once the review process is undertaken, what are opportunities there? What's the time commitment, and what's involved as a subject matter expert?
Yeah, so to get on a panel, we send out a form from Lineup. And what Lineup
is a
software package that we use, a data bank, that tracks people's demographic information, what region of the country, their race, their gender, their roles. And that helps us with our accreditation so that our panels are reflective of the industry. When they fill that out, they then are able to be selected for a panel. And when they actually get to a panel, our panels are generally 3 days, in some cases, or 4 days. And those panels are 6 to 8 hours, depending on how they're hosted and held. And so we do ask that they make a contribution of 3 to 4 days, depending on those panels.
Okay.
So it's a pretty big commitment, but I think it's very much worth it. I don't think I've heard many panelists, or if any panelists, say that they did not enjoy being there.
And I would echo that too. I tend to have dinner with many of the panels that are in town, and I think without exception, everyone that's come here has really enjoyed their time, and it's given them a different perspective as to what the National Registry is as an entity or an organization, as well as the process that we follow to make sure that our examinations appropriately do what they're intended to do, and that is measure competency of EMS clinicians. The final thing is the actual standard setting itself. Very similar to item review, but I will argue probably the most grueling of all the processes that we have. And I don't mean that in a negative way, even though it sounded that way, but it's very intense, because that panel sets the standard as far as what's the passing standard for future paramedics, for future EMTs, advanced EMTs, EMRs. And we have that standard setting every few years. So we bring in a group of people, about 15 of them. And what is the role there? Give me a little bit more in terms of that process of how they can be involved, recognizing it's probably the most mentally exhausting process that we have volunteers in.
So again, the SMEs, the subject matter experts, come to Columbus, and they look at test items, they look at test forms, and they decide what that passing score should be, or the cut score should be, to define that person who is minimally competent. And so they look at tons of tests, lots of items, and they make recommendations. And our psychometricians capture all of that, and then they hand that off to the board with the recommendation of that SME group. And then the board takes action based on that recommendation.
So lots of opportunities from the practice analysis through item review and potentially item writing if people are interested, and standard setting for folks to get involved if they want to give back to their EMS community. And whether it be determining what is actually happening in the field of the practice analysis, whether it be writing and reviewing items or questions, or whether it be setting the standard as far as what the minimum standard is for an EMS clinician to be safe and competent and certified. So again, where's the website they can go to?
volunteer.nremt.org.
Excellent. Well, Dr. Paul Rosenberger again with me today. Appreciate you taking time to stop by and talk about exam development cycle and opportunities for folks to get involved. Thank you for what you do for EMS, and as always, stay safe. Thank you for joining us for this episode. If you wouldn't mind, please click the like and subscribe buttons, as well as the notifications so you can get notifications of upcoming episodes. Also, for the latest and greatest happenings of the National Registry, feel free to go to nremt.org. Thank you very much. And again, stay safe.